5 times in life you'll desperately need a dark chosen one. There are moments in life when light is not what we need, moments when the affirmations ring hollow, when the incense burns out and the mantras only echo back emptiness. These are the times when the world you built, your beliefs, your identity, your entire sense of self, begins to crumble. And oddly enough, people around you might not even notice. On the outside, you're functioning, smiling, showing up, but inside, something ancient is stirring, something darker. And here's the twist. This darkness isn't evil, it's sacred. It's the part of you that's been waiting for the collapse. It's the force that doesn't comfort you with platitudes, it calls you deeper. And in those moments, you don't need a cheerleader. You need a dark chosen one. But who is the dark chosen one? They are not the typical guru. They don't wear white robes and speak only of love and light. They might show up as the person who triggers you the most, the one who doesn't coddle your wounds but demands that you bleed them out. They are the mirror you avoid, the voice that says the unspeakable, the guide who takes you not up the mountain but into the cave. And yet, somehow, you know, you need them because your soul is tired of pretending. It wants real, it wants raw, it wants transformation, not decoration.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound spiritual lesson.
The first time you'll desperately need a dark chosen one is when your life begins to fall apart for no apparent reason. You know this moment. Everything you thought was certain begins to unravel. Relationships disintegrate, jobs collapse, health falters. It's as if life itself is conspiring to dismantle you. And maybe it is, because the version of you that was surviving, playing by the rules, seeking approval, building a carefully curated identity, is no longer enough. Your soul is ready for a deeper truth, but your ego is terrified. It wants to fix, to hold on, to patch the cracks. This is when the dark chosen one arrives, not to save you, but to push you further into the destruction. They don't tell you it will be okay. They ask you, what are you afraid to lose? And in that moment you realize it's not life falling apart, it's the illusion falling away. This kind of guide doesn't offer comfort, they offer confrontation. They pull you into your shadow, not to punish you, but to liberate you. They have walked through hell and they carry the scent of fire. That's why their presence feels dangerous, but it's also why they can hold space for your descent, because they know the darkness not as a place of death, but of rebirth. They've died before, and they know what rises from ashes is more true, more wild, more free than anything you left behind. Let me ask you something. What parts of you are you still trying to keep clean, presentable, untouched by the chaos you secretly crave? The second time in life you need a dark chosen one is when you're drowning in your own false light. This is a more subtle crisis. You've done the healing, you've read the books, taken the courses, learned to speak the language of spirituality. You're saying all the right things. Everything happens for a reason. I'm manifesting abundance. I'm in alignment. But underneath it all, there's a hollow ring. You feel like a well-decorated cage. You've swapped out the old matrix for a shinier one, and no one dares to call it out, except the dark chosen one. They arrive not to validate your progress, but to dismantle the pedestal you've built. They pierce through the spiritual ego with surgical precision. They ask the questions no one else dares. Who are you when no one is watching? What are you pretending to understand? What truth are you afraid to admit to yourself? And suddenly the light you were clinging to becomes a spotlight, exposing every shadow you thought you had transcended. It's painful, humbling, but it's also the beginning of real freedom, because the dark chosen one doesn't want your performance, they want your presence. They don't care about your image, they want your truth, and they know that true awakening isn't about being above it all, it's about being with it all. The light, the dark, the messy, the sacred, the shameful, all of it. That's where wholeness lives, not in perfection, but in radical inclusion. You'll recognize a dark chosen one by the way they make you feel. Not comfortable, not inspired, but exposed, seen, called. They are not your friend, they are your initiator. They carry the medicine of discomfort and they don't dilute it. Because they know that the soul doesn't grow through pleasure, it grows through pressure, through truth, through fire. The dark chosen one is not always a person. Sometimes it's an experience, a betrayal, a loss, a moment that shatters the story you were telling yourself. But underneath the pain there's a strange clarity, a voice that whispers, "This is what you came for." And if you're brave enough to listen, to stop running, to face the thing you swore you'd never face, you begin to awaken. Not in the way you expected, but in a way that's real. So I ask you again, with love and fire, where in your life are you still clinging to light as a way to avoid the truth? Because the dark chosen one doesn't come for the version of you that wants to be liked. They come for the version of you that's ready to be free. The demon in the mirror, why your greatest enemy might be your greatest ally. It's one of the hardest truths to accept on the spiritual path. The person who triggers you the most, the one who seems to stand in opposition to your peace, your growth, even your very sense of self, may be the most important figure in your evolution. We don't like hearing that. We want our enemies to stay in their boxes. We want to label them as toxic, cut them off, move on, and wrap the whole experience in a neat little lesson. But real spiritual growth doesn't always work that way. Sometimes the one who wounds you is the one who wakes you. Sometimes the demon in the mirror is the dark chosen one in disguise. There will come a time in your life when someone enters your orbit and explodes everything you thought you knew about yourself. They don't just push your buttons, they rip the panel off the wall. They confront your deepest insecurities, your unhealed wounds, your hidden rage, and your first instinct will be to run, to blame, to demonize. But if you can pause just for a moment and ask yourself why it hurts so much, you'll begin to see something deeper. The pain is a portal, the trigger is a teacher, and the one you call enemy may be offering you a key. Why do we resist this idea so fiercely? Because it threatens the ego's most cherished illusion that we are already healed, that we are good, kind, spiritual people just trying to live our best lives, and the problem is them. But the dark chosen one comes to destroy that illusion. They come to reveal the parts of you that are still unclaimed, the rage you suppress, the jealousy you hide, the fear you decorate with spiritual language. And when they pull those shadows into the light, it feels like an attack. But it's actually an invitation to stop pretending, to stop performing, to meet yourself where you truly are. That encounter, the one that spirals you into anger, grief, confusion, is sacred. It's messy, yes, but it's also medicine, because it shows you exactly where your work is. if you're willing to look. If you're willing to feel, you'll begin to see that what you hated in them lives in you. And that's not a condemnation, it's a liberation. Because the moment you stop projecting your darkness onto others, you reclaim your power. You stop being a victim of circumstance and become a conscious participant in your own awakening. Have you ever noticed that the people who trigger you the most often mirror aspects of yourself you haven't integrated? That cruel boss, that manipulative ex, that arrogant friend. They are not just random characters in your story, they're reflections. They show you the parts of yourself you've disowned, and until you claim those parts, they will keep showing up in different faces, different forms. That's the paradox of healing. The more you reject your shadow, the more power it has over you. But when you face it, when you sit with it, breathe into it, let it speak, you begin to dissolve the illusion of separation. You begin to see that even your enemies are part of your evolution. The Dark Chosen One doesn't come to make you feel better, they come to make you realer. And sometimes they come dressed as the one you hate. But what if hate is just love wearing armor? What if the intensity of your reaction is proof of how deeply you're being called to evolve? What if the person you're resisting is the person your soul chose to awaken you? Let me ask you a question no one else will. Who in your life do you still secretly blame for your pain? And what part of you did they expose? This is not about excusing abuse or staying in harmful situations. It's about owning your experience. It's about recognizing that even in the betrayal, even in the heartbreak, even in the chaos, there was an opportunity, a mirror, a message. The Dark Chosen One doesn't play by the rules of light and love. They play by the rules of truth. And truth doesn't always feel good, but it always sets you free. When you begin to see your enemies as allies in disguise, you change the game. You stop fighting shadows and start integrating them. You stop seeking peace through avoidance and start embodying peace through presence. You begin to understand that every trigger is a treasure map, every conflict is a mirror, every breakdown is a breakthrough waiting to happen. So the next time someone shatters your sense of self, pause, breathe. Don't reach for your spiritual bypass toolkit. Don't rush to label them as low vibration or toxic. Ask instead, what part of me is being called to rise? What am I being asked to feel, to face, to free? The Dark Chosen One shows you your power by confronting your weakness. They show you your truth by exposing your lies. They show you your freedom by dragging you through your prison. And when the dust settles, when the tears dry, when you finally stop resisting and start listening, you'll realize they gave you a gift no one else could. They gave you yourself, the gatekeeper of chaos. When the world around you burns and only one voice can guide you through. There are chapters in life when everything you've built, everything you've trusted, everything you thought you understood begins to turn to ash before your eyes. It's not subtle. It's not gentle. It's the kind of chaos that doesn't knock. It kicks the door off its hinges. The ground beneath you splits, not metaphorically, but in a way that feels cellular. You wake up one day and nothing makes sense anymore. The job that once gave you purpose now feels like a cage. The relationships you relied on begin to crumble under the weight of unspoken truths. Your health, your mind, your dreams, everything begins to unravel. And while others may offer you kind words, spiritual platitudes, or surface level support, none of it touches the firestorm inside you. Because this is not a phase, this is a reckoning, and in that moment, there's only one kind of voice that cuts through the noise, the voice of the dark chosen one. This is the third time in life when their presence becomes not just helpful, but essential. In times of chaos, most people will tell you to hold on, to stay grounded, to think positive. But the dark chosen one doesn't waste time trying to glue the pieces back together. They don't try to save the old version of you. They know that version is already gone. Instead, they stand at the threshold of the inferno and say, "Jump," not because they want to see you fall, but because they know what's on the other side of surrender. The gatekeeper of chaos is not the one who calms the storm. They are the one who reminds you that you are the storm, that the fire you're walking through was never meant to destroy you, it was meant to reveal you. They don't tell you to avoid the pain, they teach you how to feel it without being consumed by it. They don't hand you a blueprint, they hand you a mirror. And in that mirror, you see the parts of yourself that are unbreakable, the parts that were forged in lifetimes of transformation, the parts that remember how to rise. Most people run from chaos because they think it means failure. But what if chaos is a sacred recalibration? What if the breakdown is your soul's way of making space for the life you were actually born to live? The dark chosen one knows this. That's why they don't try to fix you, they challenge you. They ask the questions no one else has the courage to ask. What are you afraid to lose that no longer serves you? Who are you clinging to that no longer sees you? What dream are you chasing that was never yours to begin with? In the midst of the burning, you'll be tempted to reach for comfort, to go back to what's familiar, to numb, to spiritualize the pain instead of facing it. But the gatekeeper won't let you. They'll block the exit. They'll strip you of your excuses. They'll demand that you feel every ounce of what you've been avoiding. And you'll hate them for it, until you realize that what they're really doing is giving you back your power. Because in chaos, your raw truth comes to the surface, and most people are terrified of that truth, but not the dark chosen one. They thrive in it. They know that real clarity doesn't come from control, it comes from collapse. When everything falls apart, you finally get to see what's real. You begin to discern between what was built from fear and what was born from soul. You start to see how much of your life was constructed to please others, to win approval, to avoid abandonment, and you begin to feel, maybe for the first time, what it means to be you, without the masks, without the roles, without the performance. That's when the voice of the dark chosen one becomes your lifeline. Not because they have all the answers, but because their presence gives you permission to trust the unknown. They remind you that you are not here to survive chaos, you are here to become through it. They don't offer you escape routes, they offer you initiation. And if you're brave enough to walk through the fire, you'll discover that the person you were before the collapse is a shadow compared to the soul that emerges from it. Let me ask you something only chaos can answer. Who would you be if you let it all burn? That question isn't meant to destroy you, it's meant to awaken you. Because on the other side of that fire is not emptiness, it's clarity, it's purpose, it's freedom. But you'll never get there by avoiding the flames. You have to walk straight into them. And the dark chosen one will walk beside you, not to lead you, not to carry you, but to remind you that the fire inside you is greater than the fire around you. Exercises. Exercises don't end. When the world burns, the gatekeeper doesn't hand you a fire extinguisher. They hand you a torch, and they whisper, Now go find the parts of yourself you lost in the dark. The final eclipse, when you must kill who you were to awaken who you are. There comes a moment on every true spiritual journey when you are no longer being asked to heal, to grow, to improve, or even to understand. You are being asked to die, not in body, but in identity, to let go of the person you've worked so hard to become, the one who survived, the one who adapted, the one who played the game just well enough to be accepted, to be safe. That version of you, the one built from childhood wounds, from society's expectations, from years of performance and pretending, has taken you as far as it can, and now it must die. This is the final eclipse, the moment when the light of who you thought you were is overtaken by the dark brilliance of who you truly are. This death is not poetic, it's brutal. It doesn't happen in a meditation or on a retreat. It happens in silence, in solitude, in the aching stillness where you realize that no one can do this part for you. The dark, chosen one may have led you to the edge, stood beside you in chaos, held the mirror to your demons, but now they step back, because this is your death, this is your rebirth. And it's sacred. You will feel the pull to go back, to resurrect the old self, to negotiate with the universe. Can I keep just a little bit of who I was? But there's no halfway here. There's only surrender. There's only the terrifying, liberating realization that you are not your name, your story, your achievements, your wounds, or even your dreams. You are something formless, infinite, uncontainable, and to embody that you must let go of everything that ever made you feel small enough to be understood. Why is this moment so rare? Because most people stop just before the threshold. They cling to the identity they've curated, mistaking it for their soul. They confuse healing with hiding. They think becoming spiritual means becoming comfortable. But in truth, the spiritual path is a series of ego deaths disguised as awakenings, and the final eclipse is the one that strips you bare, not to leave you empty, but to make space for the vastness that you truly are. Let me ask you something most never dare to consider. If you lost everything you ever used to define yourself, would you still know who you are? This is where the dark chosen one's role becomes clear. They were never here to fix you. They were here to destroy the illusion of you, to push you into the fire because they knew you could survive it, to make you question everything you believed was sacred, not to make you faithless, but to help you find what's real. They were the eclipse before the light, the shadow before the truth. And while you may never fully understand why they did what they did, your soul will recognize the gift. Because on the other side of death is not nothingness, it's clarity. For the first time you see with eyes unclouded by programming. You hear with ears untuned to the noise. You move not from fear, not from desire, but from a deep, silent knowing. You stop trying to become someone, you simply are. And that is the most radical act of all. You realize that the only thing that ever needed to die was the lie, the mask, the performance. You were never broken, you were buried. And the final eclipse was the excavation of your essence. You don't return from it as a better version of yourself, you return as your original self, wild, untamed, whole. And here's the paradox, now that you've died, you are finally free to live, not as a construct, not as a role, but as a force. You don't need validation anymore. You don't need to convince anyone of your worth. You don't even need to be understood. You are no longer trying to fit into a world you came here to transform. You are here to be, and your being is enough to shift the frequency of everything you touch. The Dark Chosen One disappears after this, not because they abandon you, but because their job is done. They were never meant to stay. They were a catalyst, a storm, a sacred disruption. And now you carry their fire within you. You become your own mirror, your own chaos, your own guide. You walk through the world different, not because you've changed, but because you've remembered. So I'll leave you with this final question, not to answer, but to live. Now that you've died to who you were, what are you finally free to become? The final eclipse is the end of seeking, the end of striving, the end of pretending, and the beginning of something vast, ancient, and utterly undeniable. You, the real you, the one the world has been waiting for. Not the light worker, not the shadow warrior, but the one who carries both, with no need to explain either. You are no longer becoming, you are being, and that is the most dangerous, most divine thing you can ever do.